Good morning, everyone. I'm Rick Zanotti, and welcome to wrong show. Welcome to SchreckTeck, episode number 66. And joining
We're
me...
on Route 66 today.
Oh, Route 66. And joining me right next to me in the room next door, sort of. There she is. It's Gina Schreck. Hey, Gina.
Good day, everyone. Yeah, happy late 4th of July. Last week we wished you a 4th of July a little early. And hopefully everyone had a great time getting some, for our American friends here, celebrating. And we got to go down to Colorado Springs, and it was nice and rainy, so all the fires are under control. We've had some rain here, so it's nice. My black eye is almost gone, so that's another reason I'm celebrating.
Yep, that's good.
And Rick, today you're going to be very excited because our guest today is just a geeky girl after your own heart, because she loves AV, loves technology, uses social media, uses all the geeky gadgets to really make meetings and events more spectacular. And I actually met our guest, Midori Connolly, at a conference in San Diego. Oh gosh, maybe Midori, it seems like a long time ago, but 6 months ago or so, I met Midori. Her and I were geeky girls on stage doing presentations about mobile applications, and whether it was iPad, but she had some great stuff on how to present using mobile tools and apps and ways to just bring a better presentation to a virtual audience or a better presentation using mobile tools. So I'm really excited. So welcome, Midori.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Midori. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me. How is everybody?
We're doing great.
Good.
I was like, where'd she go? There she is. Is she back?
She's back. Never left.
Never left. Welcome, Midori.
Thank you. It's great to see you. Great to be here. And it feels like, how is it? There's something about when you meet people online and then meet them in person. It feels like you have this 20-year-old friendship.
I know.
Like we've known each other forever.
I agree. I think that's what it is, and you feel like you know them, so then you kind of stay in touch with what they're doing online. And I'm always impressed with women in technology and using the stuff. You take it more into that tech world of the equipment and making meetings better and using tools for events. And you've been named one of the top. I have to read this because it's very impressive. For those of you who are in the meetings and events industry, first of all, Midori is actually the chief AV girl, which I love that title, at Pulse Staging and Events. And she actually is one of the top speakers. She's a platinum speaker by Meeting Professionals International, MPI, named her one of the top speakers, so which is really hard in that industry to achieve that. So that's great. But I love this, that you were named by Biz Bash Media the 40 under 40. I'm sorry, that was by Collaborate Magazine, top 40 under 40, which tells you that she's young. And so, Rick and I feel older right now. But that's really impressive, and just really an expert, a go-to person when you're talking about hybrid meetings and events. And so I'm really thrilled that you're here. And again, it has been quite a while. I think it was like February, wasn't it?
It was January in San Diego, in my beautiful hometown.
And it was for one of the meetings events, a PCMA event that we both spoke at.
Yes.
So that's exciting. But I'm interested in something. In your bio, you talk about you started at age 19 getting into all this. What does a 19-year-old girl, how does a 19-year-old girl get into AV and technology?
Oh my gosh. So it actually was really just more of high tech. So it was more on the software side. When I was 19, I kind of stumbled into a position. I started off filing. I honestly started off it's one of those stories, right? I started off doing like filing and assisting people, and really started to fall in love with what we did, which was educational software for adult and adolescent learners. So this was basic skills education. And I guess it was 16 years ago, right? So 16 years ago, we were working with Windows 3.0, Windows 95, oh my gosh, remember that awesome, those back in the day. And so we were operating this software on these platforms, and I just fell in love with the idea that, this technology could improve people's lives. And again, I mean, it was basic skills. It was how to read, how to count money. And we were working in prisons, in alternative schools. And I just realized that, there was something to be said for the way technology can improve people's lives. And so that just, and I mean, not only that, but of course, being a digital native, right, being born into the world of the digerati, we had like the Commodore 64 in the living room, and, was programming when I was a kid, just thinking, we're just making a cool picture on the screen, so it's really just been a part of my life. And I ended up doing database design and then training on the databases for that company. And it was all self-taught and just really came from that passion of seeing how it could change people's lives.
Were your parents techie?
What's so funny? I don't think of them being techie, but they probably were. I mean, they were pretty early adapters. None of my friends had computers in their houses, personal computers, and I can remember my dad bringing it home and like us setting it up together, it was like it replaced the TV. So I guess we were actually kind of geeky in a way. I just never would think of that. I think my dad was more like, I always thought of more of like a mechanic kind, to be like, fixing cars and stuff, but not, and I guess for him it was just a natural translation. So
that is interesting, because I just was talking to my 16-year-old daughter about the concept of growing up in a house where technology is available. The parents don't have to necessarily be techie, but where technology is available. Because I said to her, it's interesting that she takes for granted the fact that if she wants information, she knows where to look. If she is with, has a study group, she knows to do a Skype call or a Facebook group call or something with her friends. It's like she doesn't have to wonder, how do I solve this problem? She knows that there's tech solutions available, and partly because I'm encouraging her to do that. But I think that is interesting, just that whole concept of growing up in a house where even computers are available. It does tend to help you look for solutions in that area of technology. So that's kind of a fun thing. So when did you actually launch your business?
We launched this company in 2005, so I can't believe is it really 7 years? Whenever I say that, it's like, no way, that was like, there's no way, it had to be 2 years ago. So we started it 7 years ago, and, we work around the nation, doing technology and strategy for events around technology, so how to use technology smarter, better. And what we're finding is, because of the, just insanity of the second screen, the mobile screen, we really have had to branch out from just being your traditional, bring in a projectors and screens, and obviously it's more than that, we have video rigs and everything else, but we really had to learn and modify engineering and design and experience design to accommodate the fact that people don't sit in a seat necessarily anymore for an hour and a half, and that, our equipment and our technology has to accommodate the fact that we're dealing with a different kind of audience these days, and people are being pulled in many directions, and so mobility is just a part of it. So that's kind of how I've had to branch out and sort of become an expert on some of these, collaborative tools. How can we help people do presentations collectively even? How can we change it from being, sit in the seat and listen to somebody to everybody's participating, which I'm sure we're seeing, I think it's a reflection of what's happening in higher education as well, particularly at the university level, kind of that, rather than one way, lecture, having sort of an ongoing dialogue between participants and presenter.
You're right, because a lot of the new college, a lot of them are master's programs, but even in the bachelor's, they're not just sitting and talking anymore. They have a lot of group sessions, then they get back together with the teacher, which is probably good. I remember in college, half of my teachers you didn't want to hear for a full hour or two, or even worse, 3. So that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
At least
Well,
to a
and I
point.
even think of in businesses, more people are presenting with, they're partnering with other maybe vendors or partners that they present together. And so looking at how do you do that? You know, what are the tools that we need? Is it possible to do it with some of the tools that are, you know, which again, we were presenting using our iPads at that event at PCMA, which was in itself pretty cutting edge. Not many places will trust that you can actually present from your iPad. And I think more people are saying, okay, how can we use whiteboard tools to collaborate in meetings and events on our iPads? And so really we're at this place where we're trying to blend mobile and collaboration and, you know, presenting. So yeah, I bet your business has really had to change to stay up on all that.
Absolutely. We really have had to adapt. And like I said, you know, that's really helped me kind of identify some of the specific tools that you need. And I mean, I've walked into situations where, you know, the audiovisual technician doesn't understand the needs when it comes to presenting with something like your iPad. You know, they're not, the experience level just isn't there yet. And of course, with each iteration of the iPad, we have new considerations like, oh, it won't do that. Oh, it will do this, you know, or, you know, just understanding the difference between, let's see, first generation iPad, iPad 2, and now it's just iPad again.
I know. And that processor, well, and this little dongle that I ended up going and buying is the one that I usually show up if I'm going to present with my iPad.
That's for the new iPad, right?
It's the new iPad.
Yeah, because it's different from the old dongle.
Right.
It really is. It's just an HDMI. But most of the they think, oh, well, all you need is a VGA. And then if you have do you have the dongle for it, and then the power. So it was interesting how as a if you're going to present using these tools, there's some things you need to be prepared for, because you can't just show up with your iPad and say, okay, I'm ready. They may not, like you said, they may not know the tools that you need because they haven't used them.
Now, you know, one of the things I find fun is when you go to a show and you're doing a presentation and you've got the AV people setting you up and they're getting the mics ready and everything, and they're looking at you like, okay, here's another idiot who knows nothing. And I love when you start talking to them going, is that a Shure? And they look at you like, you know the brand? Or you go, you know what, that's a Mackie mixer. I've got one of those. And they just go, uh-huh. You know, their eyes open up, and then they stop being even nicer to you because it's like, wow.
Imagine when Midori does. I mean, again, I think now we're at a place where more and more women are very techie, but I would imagine, especially early on, you're young, you're female, and then you come in and you're being techie. Was that a hard thing for people to take you seriously?
Yeah, and I sometimes I think it's just more annoying to them than anything else, you know, and I have to be respectful of the fact that they're just trying to do their job, and that, yes, I am kind of annoying, you know, getting in the way, like, no, I just want to do everything myself. I can do that. You know, it goes half and half. Some of the, and most of them are men. I mean, I think that, so we were just at our annual our Geek Fest, which is Infocom's annual trade show, and I think that we've kind of looked at the ratios of women to men, and it must be somewhere between 1% and 2% that are women, because they aren't in the industry. Now, it is changing, though. As we're starting to see these industries blend, there are more and more women because of, you know, as we move into, you know, consumer products becoming professional products, you start to see the expertise grow, and the intimidation factor, it starts to drop. So that's a great thing. Actually, I shameless plug for a new organization that's just started, and it's Women in AV. So it's just womeninav.com. Grassroots organization started by about 4 wonderful women in the industry. And they're starting mentorship programs, you know, just trying to get the word out there that there are women in the industry and there is support for them. And if there are women who would like to be in the industry, it's a fabulous industry to be in. So just total shameless plug there.
That's great. That's cool that there are organizations popping up like that. So do you find that people have more questions around virtual, because that is still a very hot topic in any industry, is virtual meetings and events, or is it more from the presenter side of, I want to use these tools, but I don't know the hardware that I need?
Well, I think that, so interesting term, right? Virtual meeting, because it applies to so many different situation. So, I think about, thinking about the people who are probably here listening, watching, when they think of virtual meeting, they're probably thinking of, we're jumping on something like WebEx or, GoToMeeting or using one of those tools. In our industry, of course, we're thinking virtual meeting means, you have a conference happening and we're streaming out content, using something like Justin TV or, one of the other platforms that we use. That's what we're thinking, is that there's a virtual event happening and we're sharing the content being presented with a remote audience. I use a lot of distance learning terms because of my background. So, there's some confusion just around that darn term. But, we have had to kind of adapt and think about, one of the key elements that we've had to learn about is what's called a back channel. So the back channel conversation is just that conversation that's happening around a main event. So even if you think about a conference call, right, and as, in our pre-show, as I said, for me, conference calls are the work of the devil. I hate conference calls. I can't stand conference calls. Yeah. And I'm sure many of you who are listening, watching, participating feel the same way, right? I mean, it's like the most antiquated way to communicate. So one of the best ways that I've found to get the most out of the conference call is to create a back channel. So when you have a virtual event, right, where people are not physically present, or some are physically present and maybe others aren't, so a blended situation. However you can facilitate a back channel is ideal. So that would mean, say for instance, you are sitting in a conference and there's a lecture happening. We're all chatting on Twitter, right? We are using a hashtag to communicate. That would be a back channel conversation. We may be saying, we may be sharing with the world at large, right? The people who aren't in the room. We may be talking to each other. It's kind of like passing notes in class. Right. And, we do it sometimes by SMS. So these are conversations that are happening around the content, but are very key and very important. It's a mistake to think that it's detracting from the conversation, just like what's happening on over here, right? So, there's a conversation happening. You're still listening to me. You're just talking about your black eye, right? So there's, right. You're talking and you're having a conversation, and that's the point. Once I say something that's interesting, you may stop and listen, and then you'll go back to doing what you're doing. So our brains have changed. We all know we're capable of doing more than one thing. So for instance, one of my favorite tools, and it's free, it's easily accessible, is just to use a Google Doc when you're on a conference call. So opening up a collaborative Google Doc, making sure everyone has an invitation, maybe even have the agenda in the Google Doc, and then have everybody log in. And you can modify and add to the agenda, take notes that way collaboratively. You could do it in really cool. Like a conference session. And then there's also the chat feature on the side. So, like, when I'm on a conference call, I always have that, 15 minutes where I need to say something, and it's like, you never know when to talk because there's no visual cue. So that can just be a great way. You have that little sidebar, and you just say, oh, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, or, I need to add to that. And that cues whoever's talking that, hey, you need to, we need to stop and listen to what somebody has to say. Or that you just put it in the document and it's done, right? Maybe you don't even need to say it. So it accommodates everybody on the conversation. And that's a great thing for conferences, too, for setting up. We've done events where we've set up Google Docs for each session, and people could take notes there. And then at the end of the event, there was a collaborative, basically a set of documents that were all notes from everybody's sessions and presentations. So kind of like social note-taking, which is super cool.
Yeah, I love that. I never thought about opening a Google Doc, and then everyone can see it. And at the end, they have their notes right there.
Now, I've thought of it just within groups, but how many people can you get into it, that many Google Docs? Well, let's say one Google Doc. I haven't tried more than two.
Oh, at the same time, I think I've had about 15 to 20,
That's pretty
maybe.
good.
That's cool.
Yeah, super
Okay,
cool.
so it's like the chat room, people taking notes, people chatting back and forth, and at the end, it's already saved.
Yes. And I mean, there are some other really good tools that are out there specifically just for something like a conference call or an online meeting. One of my favorites is Twidla. It's Twiddla, and it's pretty affordable. It's like $14 a month. But it gives you kind of like the whiteboard capabilities and document modification capabilities. Oh, here, I'll type it for you. I'm not logged in, but let me see if that works.
I don't think you can type in the chat room. Which is what I was going to throw out. If any of you are listening and you haven't logged into the chat room, feel free to just log in, and then you can, ask questions, participate, but I always at the end I always save all the notes. So we'll put that in there. Twidla.
Now, are there any questions in the chat room right now?
Well, Diva is saying Twylah, Twylah. And I'm not sure, does that do the same thing, Twylah, as Twidla?
Somebody Google that, quick. Just kidding.
So Twidla is Twiddla.
Yes.
Okay. And that's for group, but that has a $14 or $15 a month charge.
I think there might be a free version. I'm not positive, but I mean, at the same time, Google Docs is free. So.
Yeah, that's although Twidla probably allows more in there at once.
Right.
So if it's a large conference, that might be something worth checking out.
And I would say even in a large conference, you're only going to have maybe 20 people at a time because not everyone's going to participate. And so, that's something to think about. Some of the other tools that we think of just for conference calls can be great too. So really anything that's like a whiteboard application.
Yeah.
One of my tools that I've been using, because I really love sort of having like a white space to think in and to play in, is just Prezi. And I don't know if you've worked with Prezi at all. Have you, Gina? Have you worked?
I love it. I love just the flexibility and the interactivity. It just seems so much more interactive than slides that everything, you can still have it planned out and you have your flow planned, but I love the fact that it seems much more creative and interactive.
Have you used, what I've done a few times for conference calls, especially for global audiences where sometimes it's easier to sketch something out or not be as linear, is to use the collaborative function with Prezi, so you can have up to 10 people editing at the same time.
Cool. I didn't know that.
So I've set up little like visual areas where people can, do some idea capture or note capture, and you can see it as they're doing it. They can highlight, they can put arrows, they can sketch, they can do many, many things. And so Prezi is a great tool for that as well. And I've even done that while I'm giving presentations. I've given out the link, and up to 10 people could be in my presentation with me.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So that was a great way for, what it's good for is the people who won't raise their hand, right? And there's a lot of those. There's a psychological safety with being able to communicate on a virtual platform using either something like Twitter or, there's some other back channel tools that are out there. Maybe it is something like Prezi where they have a little bit of anonymity. And there's also, oh gosh, I just completely spaced out. Love what happens. There's another tool called Today's Meet. So if you are presenting and you don't necessarily want a back channel conversation happening on Twitter, maybe this is sensitive or proprietary information, there's a tool called todaysmeet.com, and you can set up a semi-private chat room. If somebody got the link, they could be in there, but it's not in such a public atmosphere as something like Twitter. There you go, exactly, todaysmeet.com, perfect. And that's free, yay, free.
Free, we love free.
Yeah, and you can even, so if you wanted to, you could even use that you could display it. So they have like a projector mode where you can just kind of have it like be free falling, and displayed somewhere in the room, like a Twitter wall.
Right.
Another tool that I use that way sometimes is polleverywhere.com. Do you ever use polleverywhere.com?
I use polleverywhere.com, and that's a great one for people to whip out their cell phones and be able to participate in polls. And that one, there is a cost, but it's still for an event. If you're doing an event, that it's a great tool to be able to include everyone, whether they have Twitter or not.
Right, and I like polleverywhere.com because it's as you said, you can use SMS, but you can also freeform reply, so it can become a place where it's kind of a back channel, where people can just ask questions at any time. It doesn't have to be multiple choice, so that's a really good thing to know as well. You can do voting. There's some great ways that you can kind of manipulate Poll Everywhere, and it's the basic account, so it's the freemium model, so it's free for up to like 15 responses per question, or 25 or something along those lines, and then it goes up to like 15 plus. But what you can do is, if you're giving a presentation or have an event, you can upgrade to the higher paid account, and then just back it down the very next month.
That's what we've done just for the event. Sign up, pay the fee for that event, and then cancel it or lower it after that. Yeah.
Exactly, and they're so flexible. And if you are a nonprofit or an educational organization, they will work with you on pricing as well. So that's good to know. It's great for teachers.
Yeah, that's a cool service, and it allows people to get involved in the presentation and be engaged and using those. And it was interesting because Jeff made a comment in the chat room about he hates when you're on a webinar and they hide the chat, which is always interesting. I'm not sure why. Unless they're recording it, although it would be recording without the chat. I was going to say maybe there's some reason that they don't want you to see that you're the only one in the audience, maybe. I don't know. But they hide the chat, but I do like the back channel options.
Yes, and honestly, that is a major factor, is kind of the control issue. So that's a really good point. If you are presenting any webinars, in your speaker agreement, or when you are, talking about presenting, I would definitely recommend that you ask for any chat features to be enabled, because that's, people want to talk, right? And that means they're engaged. If they're able to talk to each other, talk to you, they're participating, right? That's the point. We don't want them just sitting there.
I know. It's like, that's going to be checking email. At least keep them involved in your conversation.
Like this, I'm looking at, I'm loving the conversation that's happening over here, like your black eye. I mean, my gosh, that's crazy.
I know.
Now I've got a quick question on gear, because people who travel and people who present always have that gear question. What do you recommend as a good projector? The new LED projectors are really small. They don't have any heat issues. And I get calls all the time. What do you recommend as a good projector? I don't even have an LED projector. We haven't used them in so long that I don't have any. But what would you recommend as a good one for a presenter?
I think, oh my gosh, so great question, because it was just an infocom. And my favorite right now, there's this little Casio like hybrid projector, which means that it's a laser and LED. So you can get up to about, I think the highest lumen count was like 4,000 lumens, which, for those of you who are like, whoop,
that's pretty bright.
It's actually a measure of light, so a measure of brightness. And this is interesting. A lumen is equivalent to one candle light. So if you imagine the light from one candle, that's a lumen. So 4,000 candles is a 4,000 lumen projector. So it's kind of like what you would see in a breakout room, or, a smaller, maybe up to about 100 people in a presentation. You can, the little LED ones, like the Pico projectors, and we're only seeing up to a few hundred lumens out of those. So there was always a brightness issue, but they're very compact. They run cool. They run off of batteries. I have one that's like 30 lumens. It's really cute, and I take it to all my presentations, which is great if you're just in a small like boardroom or small room with, you know, a few people.
Do you bring it just to show, or do you bring it and use it?
Do I what?
Do you bring it just to show people or to use it?
Both. So I always have it with me. I don't know where my little buddy is. I know it's
I have
not
one, and they're so tiny. And I thought, I gave it to my husband because I said I never present in a room that's small enough to make that really effective.
Yes, well, that's just it. So I've used it in situations where, you know, I just wanted to show something off of my iPhone really quickly to a group of people.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, being
That's perfect. Yeah.
like, oh, look, we could do this. And it was nighttime. And so we were outside at a cocktail party.
Oh, my gosh.
Showing some stuff that I had. And it was like, next thing you know, there's a little crowd. Like, what is that? What are you doing?
How'd you do that?
So I guess a fun party.
Geeks at a party. There you go.
But I think that these new hybrid projectors are probably a good option. So I would take a look at those, and they run cool. They last forever. There's no more, you know, lamps to replace. You know, the lifespan on these things is outstanding, and so I would recommend looking at that.
And I guess the corollary is also, what kind of microphones do you recommend for presenters?
Well, you know, to be honest, I mean, I don't know necessarily that I carry around a microphone, or is there a reason why one of you, I mean, I don't know. I guess
I assume they're going to provide it.
Yeah, usually they do provide it, but I always hear people asking, you know, what kind of mic would you use in front of an audience?
Or even webinars. I mean,
it just depends. Well, webinars are fairly easy. There's a lot of good mics that...
There's a lot of people who are not good. They're not set up to give good virtual presentations.
True.
I mean, look at how many guests we've had on, and there's mic issues. I mean, are there mics even for our... I mean, I love my new iMac because there's no camera, there's no external stuff needed. It's all in here, but... If you have a laptop or something that you want a better mic, do you recommend people using something different?
There are a few really good mics out there. One of the things you have to be careful with are the wireless microphones with your laptops. You'll see people trying to use like infrared and some other technologies, and they can be pretty dodgy. So you do want to be careful with the wireless. I always recommend, if you can, use a wired microphone. You know, even, I mean, look at, I'm just using my, I cannot say enough good things about these, you know, Apple, you know, standard issue, microphones / earphones, earbuds. It's really a fantastic tool. I mean, I think everyone can hear me okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's so many variables. Skype, you know, could be in and out, but you want to try and narrow down all the problems. So a good microphone, earbuds, things like that are always good when you're doing presentations virtually.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely a best practice to, you know, I mean, there's so many best practices, right? Like just shutting your windows, closing the windows, making sure that you have good audio, because the number one thing you need, I mean, your video could be faltering and people will still listen. So, you know, people are like 10 times more likely to tune out if there's poor audio. So you definitely want to make sure that the audio quality is good. You know, I've had people use like little $5 USB microphones and have had fantastic audio quality. So, you know, don't get too caught up on, you know, it being, you know, a $200 microphone and it has all the bells and whistles. Just making sure that it's clear and reliable are two very important things.
Right. Yeah, that's true. How about, are there any apps that you recommend for, we talked about Prezi, so that's a good tool for people to use. Are there any other apps that you've seen do really well for presenting or helping us kind of connect with our audiences, whether we're there in person or virtual?
I think Prezi's probably my favorite. I mean, as far as, you know, if we're doing presentations in the room, you know, I haven't really seen any tools where, I mean, we're basically just kind of stuck with Keynote and PowerPoint, right? Or Prezi. Prezi's the new dark horse that's kind of been a lot of fun. But I would say, maybe using some of these other tools in conjunction with your presentation, right? So like for me, I always have my iPad, sitting with me. So if they want to ask questions, or they're sending something through Twitter, just so that I'm monitoring what else people are talking about. I definitely think that is just a really great way to add to the conversation, take questions. Sometimes, and some of you may even do this, and you've maybe tried it, I just give out my mobile number and let people SMS questions to me. So, that can be a very, very easy, cheap, quick fix if you want to take...
Because you brought up that point that when you are presenting, sometimes there are people in the audience that don't want to raise their hand to ask the question. So whether it's through Twitter, whether it's through SMS, those are really smart ways to allow people to still ask those questions in a live audience and not be... And in a classroom, I would think as a teacher, using tools like that to allow people to ask questions, you'll get, I think, a richer discussion.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, is the, I've seen situations though where it was a very social media heavy crowd, very experienced users. It was sort of a techie crew, and they were supposed to be taking questions, and the speakers were supposed to be moderating conversations using, they had the Twitter feed up on the projector screens. The speakers couldn't see the projector screens. Another best practice is make sure that if using some kind of back channel is a fundamental part of the conversation, that the speakers are able to see what is being said. I mean, I know it seems like a no-brainer, but it's really important.
Actually, it's funny. I gave a presentation in Boston recently, which was a lot of fun. And I would look back at the screen, which was, 50 feet by something. It was huge. So you look back and it was just enormous. So that was another issue. Just hard to read something that's that big in front of you or behind you.
That's right.
Same idea.
Everyone was looking at that instead of you.
Yeah, same idea. It's like, whoa, that thing is big. So
another thing, Twitter walls, right? So I give presentations on the best way to use visual displays, Twitter walls, and I am not a big fan of having something like a Twitter wall be, 50 feet wide, taking up the room. I think that it should be maybe off to the sides or, somewhere just a little more subtle. And again, unless it's really a key part of the conversation, I don't necessarily know that it's so vital to have it right there at the front of the room. I mean, most people are looking at it on their devices anyways. But it is, and then you'll get the people who hijack the Twitter wall, right? The Twitter feed. So
right.
You have to be careful with that too. There's a few great tools that are out there. There's visible, I always get it wrong. It's either visible tweets or visual tweets. I think it's visibletweets.com. And it lets you actually moderate what goes up there. So if you do kind of get you can prevent it from being shown up on the screen.
Because invariably you'll get some spammer that shows up trying to get advertising inside of one of these things. It happens all the time.
Hashtag, yeah.
When we started doing the shows, we used to get people using the hashtags for SchreckTeck and eLearnChat, all trying to sell a service.
Yeah.
And people were getting irritated at that. So it's like, yeah, I don't blame them. But
that is annoying.
Well, that's
what
our
is that?
sound. It's almost 45 minutes.
I want to find out what tools we need.
I think, Midori, you're going to have to come on again.
We have to have you on again. But you do have some cool tools available. Where can we get in touch with you? Did I lose her audio?
No, we lost your audio for a second.
Oh, am I here?
There you are. There you're back.
I was like, oh
no. So you can find me on Twitter, AVGirl Midori. My website is pullstaging.com. I used to be a much better, more but glad to share my, I know the visual tweets. I just saw that. For some reason, it's not working. And I'll make sure that I get you the correct link. For some reason, it's escaping my brain, even though it's one of my favorite tools. Some more
That's interesting.
Contact, yeah, I was gonna say it's cutting off her audio. Well, contact Midori. She's got some great tools available and a list of tools that you should bring with you if you're going to present somewhere. So definitely so much to know, but so many great tools. I love the Google Docs. That's like the big revelation for
That's
today.
a good one.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Simple things that are just brilliant when you realize that. So thank you so much, Midori.
Thank you for having me. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. It was fun.
Thank you much. And we will see you guys next week on SchreckTeck. And remember, we're now on youtube.com/RelateCasts, and you can find the SchreckTeck playlist over there, as well as all the other videos. So we'll see you guys next week on SchreckTeck. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye, everyone. I'm putting this on here as well. Let's see.